The Lincoln Highway, the story of America's first highway. Before the modern interstate system emerged, even before the legendary Route 66 crisscrossed America, there was one road that captured the hearts and attention of the American public. A road that didn't just lead to new horizons, but forever changed how we travel, how we explore, and even how we define ourselves on this vast map. That was the Lincoln Highway, America's first transcontinental automobile road, stretching from the glittering New York City's Times Square on the East Coast to sunny San Francisco on the West Coast. Join us as we turn back time, returning to a golden era of road adventures to discover this magical journey, a journey that shaped modern America. America, before the Lincoln Highway, the grand dream begins. Over a century ago, the American transportation landscape was vastly different from what we see today. It was an era when cross-country automobile roads existed only in the wildest dreams. The routes we knew were simply simple dirt roads, mostly used by farmers and ranchers to transport goods, livestock, or to get to the nearest town for necessities. They didn't lead far, and they were often in miserable condition. Just imagine, those roads were blindingly dusty on dry, sunny days and transformed into utterly impassable quagmires every time it rained. Traveling from one state to another, or even just from a large city to a remote rural area, was a true challenge, consuming enormous time and effort. In that context, the main mode of long-distance travel, connecting the vast lands of America, was mostly trains. Trains had been the lifeline of the nation for decades, carrying passengers and goods, but they bound people to rigid schedules and fixed routes. The freedom to explore remained a distant concept for most people. However, a revolution was quietly brewing. That was the rise of the automobile. The first automobiles had appeared a few decades prior, but they were far too expensive, merely playthings of the wealthy. They were symbols of luxury, not common vehicles for the masses. It wasn't until 1908 that an event shook the nascent auto industry, the birth of the Ford Model T. The Model T wasn't just a car, it was the first mass-produced car, with its price drastically reduced to a groundbreaking level. This changed everything. Suddenly, automobiles became financially feasible for the middle class, opening a new era of personal transportation. For the first time, millions of Americans could travel at their own pace and schedule, freely exploring distant lands, unfettered by train tracks or docks. This was the beginning of a revolution, unleashing huge potential for long-distance trips, but simultaneously highlighting a major problem. America needed better, more roads to serve this mobile revolution. Amidst that backdrop, a grand vision was sparked by pioneers. Carl G. Fisher, a brilliant entrepreneur in the automobile industry, famous for being the manufacturer of Presto Light headlights and the builder of the legendary Indianapolis Motor Speedway, had a daring dream. He dreamed of a transcontinental stone road stretching across America. Fisher believed that the true popularity of automobiles hinged entirely on good roads. He realized that no matter how cheap cars became, people couldn't travel far if the roads were just dust and mud. In 1912, Fisher proposed this bold plan, calling for the construction of the Transcontinental Rock Highway. His ambition was to complete this road before the Panama Pacific International Exposition in 1915 in San Francisco, an incredibly ambitious goal at the time. However, the person who gave this project its historic name was Henry Joy. Henry Joy, president of Packard Motor Car Company, an equally visionary individual, proposed calling the road the Lincoln Highway. Fisher immediately recognized this as the perfect name because Abraham Lincoln, one of America's greatest presidents, had unified the country during the Civil War. This name not only carried deep historical significance, but also brought immense patriotic appeal, easily gaining wide support from the public and leaders. Fisher didn't want this gigantic project to be his personal effort alone. He understood that for a national-scale project like this to succeed, it needed the participation of many parties. It needed a strong organization. Therefore, Henry Joy was appointed president of the Lincoln Highway Association, LHA, an organization that would lead this entire endeavor. It was a moment in history when a great dream of connection and freedom of movement began to take shape, laying the foundation for one of America's most iconic transportation projects. The beginning and first challenges, the endless journey of the American dream. On July 1, 1913, in Detroit, the heart of America's young automobile industry, the Lincoln Highway Association, LHA, was officially established. This wasn't just the formation of an organization. It was the first truly organized effort to develop a transcontinental road across America. The LHA's goal was crystal clear: to map, sign, and promote a transcontinental road, transforming it from an idea into a reality that everyone could use. Just over 2 months later, on September 14, 1913, the route of the Lincoln Highway was widely announced. This initial route wasn't a brand new road built from scratch, but rather a clever network connecting existing roads. It spanned over 3,300 miles, passing through 12 states and cutting across 4 time zones. Later, in 1928, the route was adjusted and expanded to pass through a total of 14 states, showing the project's evolution and adaptability over time. And then, on October 31, 1913, a historic event took place: the official dedication ceremony of the Lincoln Highway. Massive, boisterous celebrations were held along the entire route. Thousands of citizens poured into the streets, waving flags, cheering, and celebrating this momentous event. It was a day of hope, of national pride, as America looked forward with a bold vision of connection and freedom of movement. However, behind those grand promotions and exuberant celebrations, the harsh initial reality of the Lincoln Highway was very different. Despite its grand announcement, at that time, it was still just a collection of existing roads and trails, many sections of which were very rudimentary and little improved. A cross-country trip on the Lincoln Highway in its early years was still a true sporting challenge, requiring thorough preparation and nerves of steel. It could easily gobble up anywhere from 20 to 30 days of your time, a duration we can hardly imagine today for traveling across a country. A 1916 road guide listed essential items for the trip. You were advised to bring camping gear, canned food, and durable clothing. Not only that, drivers also needed to carry multiple spare tires, tire chains, jacks, and shovels to deal with muddy or damaged sections of the road. This was not a relaxing vacation, it was an arduous expedition. Effie Price Gladding, one of the first adventurers who drove along this road in 1914 from San Francisco to New Jersey, shared her invaluable experience. She emphasized the need for a calm attitude to deal with all difficulties on the road, from rough, broken roads to unexpected situations that might arise. Her story vividly outlined the challenges faced by the pioneers of the Lincoln Highway. Initially, Carl Fisher had hoped that automobile companies would contribute a significant amount of money, about $10 million, to build this road. However, Henry Ford, a highly influential figure, refused to fund it. He believed that roads should be built by the government, not by private companies. Faced with this refusal, the LHA changed its strategy. Instead of just seeking large donations, they focused on educating the public about the urgent need for better roads, especially concrete roads. To prove the superiority of this material, the LHA began building concrete seedling miles in rural areas. These were short, sample sections of road, built to high standards, so people could directly experience the smoothness and durability of concrete roads compared to dirt or common stone roads. And the culmination of this effort was the Ideal section in Indiana. This was a famous example, built to the highest standards at the time. The Ideal section was 40 feet wide, about 12 meters, 10 inches thick, about 25 centimeters, and most importantly, had no at-grade crossings, ensuring maximum safety and flow. This project was truly a dream come true, a living testament to the LHA's vision and the potential of modern roads. It wasn't just a stretch of road, it was a statement about the future of American transportation. Do you remember your first long road trips? What did the roads back then look like compared to the ones we drive on today? Share your memories in the comments. Exploring Wyoming, where history and nature intersect. The journey along the Lincoln Highway takes us through many states, each with its unique character. But upon entering Wyoming, travelers experience a unique blend of history and the wild nature of the American West. Cheyenne, Wyoming, is one of 5 state capitals that the Lincoln Highway passed through. This place is not just an important stop, but also a living testament to the road's legacy. Today, 16th Street in Cheyenne is still renamed Lincoln Way, retaining the glorious name of the historic road. Travelers back then often chose to stay at the historic Plains Hotel, a symbol of luxury amidst the wilderness, or sought out the Free City Campground. This campground was so popular that by 1920, it had attracted up to 40,000 people, transforming Cheyenne into a bustling tourist hub. As travelers ascend to higher elevations, they will reach the Ames Monument and Sherman Hill Summit, the highest point on the Lincoln Highway, at an elevation of 8,835 feet, about 2,693 meters. Here, you will find the Lincoln Bronze Bust and the Henry Joy Monument. These monuments are not just simple sculptures, they are powerful symbols of the legacy and vision of this great road, reminding us of those who laid its foundation. Throughout its history, the Lincoln Highway was rerouted many times to improve and shorten distances. A prime example is the section passing through Telephone Canyon, built between 1919 and 1920. This was considered a feat of engineering at the time, demonstrating the unwavering efforts to transform this road into a modern and safe route. When traveling through Wyoming, tourists not only enjoy the scenery, but also have the opportunity to meet real cowboys, witness ranching activities, and interact with locals at cafes, taverns, and hotels along the highway. These experiences added to the richness of the journey. Effie Price Gladding, the adventurer we mentioned earlier, also documented these memorable interactions and encounters in detail in her diary. However, route determination was not always smooth. A fierce battle erupted between the towns of Medicine Bow and Elk Mountain over where the route should pass. Each town wanted the road to go through it to benefit economically. August Rim, a shrewd businessman in Medicine Bow, took matters into his own hands boldly. He faked road signs and even invited chambers of commerce to drive through his town, aiming to ensure that the Lincoln Highway would pass through Medicine Bow. This is an interesting story showing the importance of this road to local communities. Yet history took unexpected turns. When Interstate 180 opened in 1970, it killed Medicine Bow and other small towns like Rock River and Vosler. I-80 was designed to bypass small towns, aiming to reduce travel time. This completely changed the philosophy of travel, from a journey where exploring roadside towns was part of the fun, to a destination where the goal was to reach the destination as quickly as possible. This was a major shift that profoundly impacted the lives of many small communities along historic roads. And we cannot forget to mention Wyoming's unique landscapes. The Red Desert is one of the most striking attractions. Some travelers loved the pungent and aromatic characteristic smell of Wyoming sagebrush, feeling it was an integral part of the Western experience. However, others had a completely opposite view. They described it as a place where even prairie dogs, rattlesnakes, and coyotes had given up in disgust, alluding to the harshness and isolation of the region. The Lincoln Highway in this area cleverly followed the abandoned old Union Pacific Railroad grade, utilizing existing infrastructure to create a more efficient route. Upon reaching Rock Springs, a famous landmark that travelers cannot miss is the Rock Springs Coal Arch, built in 1928. This spot is known for its speed limit of only 8 miles per hour, one of the lowest along the entire route, reminding drivers to slow down and enjoy the surrounding scenery. The Green River is also a notable point on the journey. In 1913, travelers had to cross a dilapidated old bridge, considered the worst stretch of road in Wyoming. But by 1922, a new bridge was built, transforming this river crossing into a beautiful river crossing, demonstrating significant infrastructure improvement. And finally, Church Butte is a destination that surprises visitors. This place stands out with its unusual rock formations, sculpted over millions of years of weathering. F.E. Price Gladding described these rock formations as giant fortresses standing tall amidst the landscape, creating a majestic and impressive scenery. The end of the named road era and the birth of modern highway systems. The Lincoln Highway was a private project, but its vision soon extended beyond individual or organizational scope. The LHA recognized that for a truly effective nationwide road system, government support was essential. They actively lobbied the government to support road construction, particularly emphasizing its importance to national security, convincing the Department of Defense of the strategic benefits of better roads. The military importance of roads was clearly demonstrated in 1919, when a massive military motor convoy was dispatched transcontinentally along the Lincoln Highway. This convoy, comprising nearly 300 soldiers and 80 vehicles, began its arduous journey from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. This trip was far from easy. With roads not yet fully paved, the convoy frequently encountered mud, got stuck, and had mechanical breakdowns. The entire journey lasted 62 days, with an average speed of just a few miles per hour. One of the members participating in this historic trip was young Colonel Dwight D. Eisenhower, then a relatively little-known officer in the U.S. Army. This challenging experience left a profound impression on him. It demonstrated the urgent need for paved roads for national defense, for the rapid and efficient movement of troops and equipment in case of a national emergency. Eisenhower later drew on this very experience to form his vision for a modern, efficient interstate highway system for America. This was a future-shaping moment, not just for transportation, but also for U.S. national security. After World War I, with the automobile boom and the growing awareness of the strategic importance of roads, the federal government began to act. The Federal Highway Act of 1921 was a significant landmark. This act provided matching funds to states for road construction, encouraging cooperation between the federal government and the states to develop the road network. As a result, rapid road improvements took place across the country. Large-scale concrete road construction projects began to appear, transforming muddy dirt roads into more solid routes. However, along with this rapid development, a new problem arose: the proliferation of hundreds of different named roads. Every organization, every community seemed to want their own named road, leading to a confusing jumble of roads for drivers. Imagine trying to navigate cross-country when every mile had a different name, a different signage system, or even no signs at all. This caused serious difficulty in navigation and reduced the efficiency of the road network. To address this chaotic situation, Washington authorities proposed a numbering convention for all national roads. The idea was to create a uniform, easy-to-understand system using standard federal shield signs, the familiar shield symbol we see on highways today. This decision meant that the signs of the named roads were eliminated, making way for a much more logical and efficient system. This was a great leap forward, bringing clarity and order to America's road network. For the Lincoln Highway, this change meant that it relinquished its independent designation to become part of the national highway system. The Lincoln Highway was designated as U.S. Route 30 for most of its length, spanning across many states. However, in other areas, it also became US 1, US 530, US 40, and US 50, reflecting its integration into a larger and more complex network. This marked the end of a golden era of named roads, but simultaneously opened a new chapter for American road travel. Before the ushering in of the National Numbered Highway System, the Lincoln Highway Association, LHA, had successfully completed its historic mission. In the fall of 1926, the LHA leadership voted to disband at the end of 1927. They recognized that their initial goal, a transcontinental highway network, was becoming a reality through the efforts of the federal government and the states. The LHA played a pioneering role, demonstrating the feasibility and necessity of such a road. When the government took over this role, the LHA gloriously fulfilled its historical duty. To honor Abraham Lincoln and the road's legacy, in 1928, a final and meaningful effort was undertaken. Thousands of Boy Scouts across the country placed nearly 3,000 concrete markers bearing the Lincoln Highway emblem along the entire route. These markers were not just road signs, they were small monuments, reminding us of the great vision, the perseverance of those who built this road, and its role in connecting America. Today, finding one of these markers is still a special moment for history enthusiasts, a tangible reminder of a bygone era. How do you think the shift from historically and personally significant named roads to a modern numbered system impacted the American road trip experience? Do you think we lost some of the soul of the journey? Enduring legacy. The road that never truly disappears. Although the Lincoln Highway completed its pioneering mission, its story doesn't end there. It sowed the seeds for a larger idea, a vision that would completely reshape the American transportation landscape, the Interstate Highway System. It was Dwight D. Eisenhower who, as a young colonel, participated in that arduous 1919 journey on the Lincoln Highway, who was deeply influenced by that experience. Not only that, during World War II, he also had the opportunity to witness Germany's efficient Autobahn network with highways designed for rapid military movement. These experiences formed in Eisenhower a strong vision for a nationwide limited-access highway network, highways that allowed for fast, safe, and efficient travel without interruption from intersections or traffic lights. When he became president in 1953, Eisenhower brought this vision to life. He signed the Federal Highway Acts of 1954 and 1956, providing massive funding and the legal framework to build a modern highway network. This was one of the largest and most ambitious public infrastructure projects in American history, completely transforming how people traveled and how the economy operated. Eisenhower believed that this road network was not only essential for civilian transportation, but also a crucial part of the national defense system during the Cold War. The result of this act was the birth of the interstates we know today. In particular, Interstate 80 replaced much of the Lincoln Highway's route, stretching from New Jersey to California. I-80 was designed for much higher speeds, greater safety, and efficiency than its predecessor. While I-80 represented progress and modernity, it simultaneously changed the role of the older roads. Today, many sections of the Lincoln Highway lie abandoned and in disrepair, forgotten, gradually fading into oblivion under the dust of time. Meanwhile, other sections are still used as local routes, serving the daily commuting needs of small communities. This situation symbolizes a fundamental shift in travel philosophy, from a journey being paramount to merely a means to reach a destination. The speed and efficiency of the interstates diminished the charm of slowing down and enjoying the scenery that trips on the Lincoln Highway once offered. However, the legacy of the Lincoln Highway never truly vanished. In the 1980s, a new interest in the Lincoln Highway began to blossom. This revival was largely thanks to Drake Hokanson's inspiring photo book. His book wasn't just about photographs. It spoke to the emotion of the road, of getting off the interstates, of rediscovering America. It evoked a nostalgia for a simpler time, when road trips were true adventures, full of surprises and discovery. This new interest led to the formation of the new Lincoln Highway Association in 1992. This organization was founded with a clear mission: to identify, preserve, and improve access to remaining sections of the Lincoln Highway and its related historic sites. They tirelessly worked to seek out old road sections, forgotten bridges, faded signs, and vintage buildings that were once an integral part of the road. Their goal is not just to preserve history, but to rekindle the spirit of exploration and adventure in a new generation. A testament to this resurgence was the 100th anniversary event in 2013. 270 members from around the world drove to Kearney, Nebraska to celebrate this historic milestone. It wasn't just a gathering, it was a common journey where enthusiasts could share their stories, explore old road sections, and recreate the spirit of the pioneers. This event showed the strong vitality of the Lincoln Highway in the hearts of history and road trip lovers. The current value of the Lincoln Highway lies in the experience it offers. Exploring the Lincoln Highway today provides the opportunity to slow down and enjoy the pleasure of motoring that previous generations had. It's not about speed or efficiency, but about discovering the history of both the road and America, 1 mile at a time. It's a return to the getting there is half the fun spirit of early 20th century automobile pioneers, where the journey mattered more than the destination. Fortunately, many old road sections, bridges, hotels, and old stops still exist. They are not just physical structures. They are pieces of all the lost eras of American life. They tell stories of those who traveled them, of social and cultural changes, and of the evolution of America. When you drive on an old Lincoln Highway section, you're not just driving on a road, you're driving on history, touching the spirit of a bygone era, and rediscovering a part of yourself on that journey. The Lincoln Highway may have given way to modern, faster, and more efficient roads, but its spirit lives on in memories, in the roads we can still explore. For those who truly want to experience America most authentically, who want to relive what the early automobile pioneers experienced, try once to get off the interstate and seek out parts of the old road, the road of dreams, of freedom, and of endless adventure. After 100 years on the Lincoln Highway, we realize that the journey itself is the most important thing, not the destination. A view of American life during the 1940s. Do you remember those family stories about when life moved slower, was tougher, but felt closer? Let's travel back to the 1940s, a decade of daily hardships and quiet heroism. How did people hold on to hope and joy amid so much uncertainty? Join us as we rediscover the resilience and unity that carried America through its darkest days. The dawn of a new era, from the Great Depression to war. Let me take you back to a time that perhaps your grandparents still hold deep memories of, a period of immense challenge, where every day was a quiet battle. The shadow of the Great Depression. Before the 1940s even began, the landscape of America was still shrouded in the deep darkness of the Great Depression of the 1930s. Can you imagine a time when not just homes and farmlands, but even dreams seemed to be swallowed by despair? Life back then was truly difficult. People struggled just to find enough food, clothing, and shelter. It was a relentless fight, where every penny, every piece of bread, was as precious as gold. Simple family meals, carefully patched old clothes, and rickety homes became common sights of daily life. Entertainment, something we take for granted today, became a luxury, non-essential, and cut first when money was tight. Can you imagine a life where even the small joy of a movie screening or a concert was out of reach? Yet, even in those dark times, Americans found incredible creativity. They learned to make do with what they had, turning old into new, and finding unique solutions to survive. It was a time of quiet sacrifices, where neighbors shared meals and strangers helped each other without asking for anything in return. And above all, it was the power of community coming together to face adversity. Streets became places where everyone worked through difficulties together. No one was left behind. It wasn't just solidarity, but an indomitable spirit, a powerful will to rise, like seedlings sprouting through dry soil. The call to war and a fateful change. But then a louder call echoed across the world, pulling America out of its domestic concerns. World War II, which broke out in 1939 and lasted until 1945, touched every aspect of American life, completely changing the nation's destiny. Do you remember the stories of this powerful transformation? Initially, the United States maintained neutrality. After World War I, many Americans didn't want their country to be drawn into another global conflict. Isolationism was a strong ideology, keeping the U.S. out of the war, raging in Europe and Asia. But then, public opinion gradually shifted. News of the devastation, of the aggression by fascist and militaristic powers, stirred the American conscience. Despite much debate, more and more people realized that the world's security was their own security. And then, the fateful event occurred, the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, a day President Franklin D. Roosevelt called a date which will live in infamy, forced the U.S. to officially enter the war. This event awakened a sleeping giant, turning isolationism into a thing of the past and ushering in a new era of global intervention. No one could forget that day, as news of the surprise attack spread across the country, turning fear into ironclad determination. Throughout this difficult period, one great figure stood at the helm: Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR. He led the United States from 1933 until his death in 1945, navigating both the Great Depression and World War II. He is the only president in U.S. history to be elected to 4 consecutive terms. Can you imagine the weight on the shoulders of a man who had to lead a nation through the 2 greatest crises in its history? His New Deal policies helped lift the country out of the Great Depression, and then he dedicated himself to mobilizing the entire nation's strength for war. Under his leadership, the federal government orchestrated a massive economic mobilization, transforming factories that produced consumer goods into workshops producing weapons, tanks, and aircraft. Family and community adaptation. Amidst these difficulties, families had to adapt in extraordinary ways. Mothers often meticulously mended clothes and even sewed shirts and dresses from flour sacks or feed bags. Can you believe it? These bags often came with printed patterns, transforming them into creative sewing material. It was a way to save every penny, while also showcasing the ingenuity and resourcefulness of American women. A family usually had only one car. Travel was often carefully planned to save gasoline. Laundry was often taken to a professional laundry service. Wet clothes were brought home to be line-dried outdoors, and then a lot of ironing was needed. This shows the lack of conveniences compared to today. Homes often didn't have air conditioning or hair dryers. Hot summers or cold winters had to be endured with traditional solutions and human resilience. Mothers typically cooked 3 meals a day, but family dinners were rare because fathers often worked very late, sometimes 7 days a week, to support the war effort. It was a life where personal sacrifice for the common good was self-evident. But it was precisely in this challenging context that community cooperation and government intervention, though sometimes hesitant and imperfect, played an extremely important role in helping the United States and its people overcome the darkest period of the Great Depression and confront the war. It was a decade where the "we're all in this together" spirit was most clearly demonstrated. Rosie the Riveter and the rise of women. Imagine a world where the role of women was redefined in just a few short years. A world where women, our grandmothers, stepped out of the kitchen and changed an entire nation. The 1940s was that time, and the image of Rosie the Riveter became a vivid symbol of this great transformation. Golden opportunities during wartime. As millions of American men were drafted to fight in the war, a severe labor shortage emerged in factories and industries. The government had to launch strong propaganda campaigns to recruit women into professions previously dominated by men. Can you imagine the shock this change caused to social norms at the time? These efforts led to a sharp increase in the number of women working in the defense industry, non-combat military roles, and healthcare. They worked in factories producing aircraft, weapons, and ships, and took on support roles for the military, from driving trucks to repairing machinery. The image of Rosie the Riveter, with her flexed bicep and determined face, became a symbol for millions of American women who entered the workforce to support the war effort. Before 1940, less than 15% of married women held paid employment, but the war changed this dramatically. Millions of women entered the workforce, proving their capabilities and dedication. Challenging social stereotypes. Women overcame significant discriminatory barriers and challenged traditional social norms with their crucial wartime labor contributions. They not only performed physically demanding and skilled jobs previously reserved for men, but also faced skepticism and prejudice from a segment of society. Recruitment campaigns for the Women's Army Corps popularized idealized images of military women who combined traditional beauty with wartime strength. For example, a WAC recruitment poster titled "Woman's Place in War" redefined the meaning of the common phrase, "A woman's place is in the home." It illustrated that World War II redefined the roles of American women in society, expanding their space from the kitchen to the factory floor and military barracks. Similarly, the Cadet Nurse Corps' recruitment campaign portrayed nursing as a proud profession, elevating the status of women in this noble work. A lasting legacy. Although after the war there were efforts to push women back into traditional domestic roles, with millions of women being laid off to make way for returning male veterans, fashion trends also reverted to dresses and girdles instead of practical pants and jackets. Can you feel the social pressure to return to normalcy after the war ended? However, women's wartime contributions left long-lasting positive impacts on female employment, permanently changing American gender roles. By 1947, the proportion of women in the workforce had returned to 1940 levels. This shows that despite an immediate post-war decline, women continued to seek and maintain their positions in the economy. Women's participation in paid work outside the home helped them gain social respect and experience managing household finances. They challenged the idea that they belonged only in the private sphere and became a powerful force in the public space, moving one step closer to equality. These changes also foreshadowed permanent employment opportunities for women in the 1970s and 1980s. It can be said that Rosie the Riveter was not just a wartime icon, but also a pioneer for the later feminist movement. A multifaceted social landscape, opportunities and challenges. The 1940s presented a colorful social tapestry, but it was not without its dark threads. While the war opened new opportunities for some groups, it also brought painful challenges and injustices for others. New opportunities for African Americans. World War II spurred economic growth and created a massive demand for labor. This opened up employment opportunities and raised the social standing of African Americans. Did you know that before the war, many African Americans faced severe discrimination in jobs and opportunities for advancement? New Deal relief programs, especially the Works Progress Administration, so WPA, provided a crucial economic floor for the Black community in the 1930s. The WPA, as a primary source of income, was compared to agriculture and domestic service in terms of its importance in generating income for African Americans. Jobs in war factories brought higher wages and stability they had never experienced before. This not only improved their material lives, but also sparked hope for a more equal future. Severe challenges for Japanese Americans. While African Americans saw glimmers of hope, Japanese American citizens became victims of the most severe discrimination during the war years. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, fears of terrorism, espionage, and sabotage spread across the United States. Baseless fear and racial prejudice led to a regrettable act in history. On February 19, 1942, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. This order forced approximately 120,000 Japanese Americans living on the California coast to leave their homes, jobs, and possessions and be incarcerated in internment camps deep inland. They were stripped of their freedom solely because of their ethnic origin, regardless of whether they were U.S. citizens or not. Their families were separated, property lost, and lives completely overturned. Additionally, about 600,000 Italian permanent residents and some non-naturalized German citizens also faced travel restrictions after Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy declared war on the United States in December 1941. However, these restrictions for Italians were lifted in October 1942, much earlier than for Japanese Americans. This incident remains a dark stain on President Roosevelt's human rights record. It reminds us of the painful consequences of fear and prejudice during wartime. Great strides in technology. While the world was engulfed in the smoke and fire of war, another quiet revolution was taking place in laboratories and research workshops. The 1940s was not only an era of war, but also a crucial germination period for the development of information technology, IT. Inventions from this period laid a solid foundation for the smart electronic devices and diverse software applications we use today. The genesis of information technology. Can you imagine that the first colossal, cumbersome computers were born precisely during World War II, out of the need for faster, more accurate calculations to serve the war effort? Key inventions during this period included the ENIAC computer and the transistor. They weren't just simple machines. They were the first bricks in building the modern technological world. ENIAC, the giant that started the computer era. In 1945, a colossal machine was born named ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. ENIAC became the world's first electronic computer. It was developed during World War II with the initial purpose of calculating firing tables for the U.S. Army artillery. This was an extremely important task, requiring speed and accuracy that humans could not achieve. ENIAC was a massive machine, occupying 167 square meters, equivalent to a tennis court, and weighing about 27 tons, as heavy as a large truck. Despite its size, it was 1,000 times faster than previous mechanical calculators, marking a breakthrough at the time. To build ENIAC, about 17,468 vacuum tubes were needed, and these tubes frequently broke down and required replacement. Programming ENIAC was difficult and time-consuming, using wires and switches similar to a telephone switchboard. Can you imagine a room full of wires and switches where engineers had to work meticulously to program this machine? ENIAC was a precursor to the development of other electronic computers, which were later used for various purposes. From calculating missile trajectories to weather forecasting and atomic energy research, ENIAC opened the door to a new era of computation and automation. The transistor, A historical turning point in technology, 1947. Just 2 years after ENIAC's debut, an even more revolutionary invention appeared. The invention of the transistor in 1947 at Bell Labs by William Shockley, John Bardeen, and Walter Brattain was a significant breakthrough. It ushered in an era of miniaturization, increased efficiency, and reduced costs for electronic devices. Previously, electronic devices used bulky vacuum tubes that consumed a lot of power and were prone to breaking down. Transistors were different. They were compact and much more efficient. This invention laid the foundation for the rapid development of technology in the following decades. It led to the advent of integrated circuits, ICs, and paved the way for the miniaturization of electronic devices. From compact pocket calculators to the smartphone you hold in your hand, all originated from this great invention. The advent of the transistor is one of the most important inventions in human history, serving as a fundamental pillar for the development of modern electronic devices, shaping our world today. Leadership and global politics. The 1940s was not only a period of changes in daily life and technology, but also a crucial chapter in the history of leadership and global politics. This was the stage where America soared, transforming from a nation with an isolationist mindset into a global superpower. FDR, the president during crisis and war. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, served from 1933 to 1945 and was a central figure in world events during the first half of the 20th century. Can you imagine the immense burden he carried leading a nation through the two greatest crises in modern history? He led the federal government through most of the Great Depression with his ambitious New Deal program. The New Deal was not just a package of economic policies, but a new philosophy about the government's role in people's lives, bringing hope and jobs to millions. His third and fourth terms were entirely dominated by World War II. FDR provided strong diplomatic and financial support to the Allies. He supplied weapons, food, and essential supplies to China, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union through the Lend-Lease program, totaling a colossal $50 billion from 1941 to 1945. This was a groundbreaking program, demonstrating America's determination to support Allied nations even before officially entering the war. From isolationism to intervention. Before the war, the U.S. pursued isolationism. After the losses of World War I, many Americans did not want their country to intervene in conflicts in Europe and Asia again. But the attack on Pearl Harbor changed everything. It was an electric shock that awakened an entire nation. On December 8, 1941, President Roosevelt officially declared war on Japan. Just 3 days later, when Germany and Italy declared war on the U.S., in response on December 11, 1941, the U.S. officially entered the European theater. This was the moment when America completely abandoned isolationism, accepting its role on the world stage. FDR oversaw the mobilization of the entire U.S. economy to support the war and implemented the Europe First strategy. This meant defeating Nazi Germany before focusing all efforts on Japan. This was a crucial strategic decision that shaped the course of the war. His administration also oversaw the construction of the Pentagon, a symbol of American military might, and initiated the development of the world's first atomic bomb, an invention that completely changed the landscape of warfare and geopolitics thereafter. A resurgent economy. Remarkably, it was this wartime mobilization that ignited an unprecedented economic recovery. It propelled industrial production to new heights and ultimately pulled the country out of the financial difficulties characteristic of the Great Depression era. Can you imagine an economy deep in crisis suddenly roaring back to life? The U.S. economy grew at an astonishing pace. Gross National Product, GNP, soared from $91.1 billion in 1939 to $213.6 billion in 1945. This was an outstanding growth, transforming America into the arsenal of democracy. The long-standing unemployment problem after the Great Depression was completely resolved. The unemployment rate sharply declined from 9.9% in 1941 to 1.9% in 1943 and 1.2% in 1944. This was a record low in U.S. history, creating 17 million new jobs. Millions of people, from women to African Americans who were previously marginalized, now had the opportunity to contribute to the economy and find stable work. Government spending also increased significantly, from 8% of GDP in 1932 to 10.2% of GDP in 1936. This demonstrates the government's increasingly strong interventionist role, not only in managing the economy, but also in reshaping society as a whole. Factories operated at full capacity, cities bustled with enthusiastic workers, and a new spirit of optimism began to spread across the country, even as the war raged fiercely. This is a powerful testament to how, when faced with challenges, a nation can transform and rise stronger. Daily life under rationing. After the United States officially entered World War II, daily life for ordinary citizens changed profoundly. Though not on the front lines, every family became a part of the Great War effort. Can you imagine a life where everything, from gasoline to sugar and milk, required ration stamps? Ration stamps and victory gardens. To ensure resources for the war, a widespread rationing program was established in the spring of 1942. This program set strict limits on the amount of gasoline, food, and clothing consumers could buy. Families were issued ration books to purchase their allotments of everything, from meat, sugar, fats, butter, fruits and vegetables, to gasoline, tires, clothing, and fuel oil. Everything was tightly controlled. This meant every American had to learn to live frugally, making the most of what they had. Do you remember stories your grandparents told about waiting in long lines for their ration stamps, or carefully budgeting to make sure supplies lasted the entire week? But precisely in those difficulties, the spirit of community became stronger than ever. Communities actively participated in scrap drives. Old rubber, tin, kitchen fats, old newspapers, wood, steel, all were collected and recycled to support the war effort. This wasn't just collecting trash, it was an act of patriotism, a tangible contribution from every citizen. Alongside this, the Victory Gardens movement spread across the country. People grew their own food, reducing the burden on the distribution system and demonstrating the spirit of, "We're all in this together." From small backyard plots to empty lots in parks, millions of Victory Gardens sprang up, transforming every citizen into a quiet soldier on the home front. Do you remember any stories about ration stamps or Victory Gardens that your grandparents used to tell? Share your memories in the comments below. Wartime spending and income. Everyday life in the 1940s was very different from today, something our generation might find hard to imagine. In 1940, the minimum wage ranged from 30 cents to 40 cents per hour, with an average annual income of $1,299. Can you picture how people would manage their expenses with that income? Prices were also very different back then. A pack of 20 cigarettes cost about 15 cents. Coffee averaged 21 cents a pound. Milk delivered to your home was about 52 cents a gallon, and gasoline was 18 cents a gallon. The average home value in 1940 was $2,938. These numbers paint a completely different picture of the value of money and the cost of living. Car ownership was relatively common, with 51% of families owning a car in 1941, increasing to 56% by 1949. This shows that cars had become an essential mode of transportation, even if they were older models and required rationed gas. However, telephone ownership was less common, with only 46% of households having a phone in 1945. This meant communication primarily relied on letters or in-person meetings, fostering stronger community bonds. By 1947, food accounted for nearly 1/3 of total consumer spending. This reflects the importance of ensuring enough food for every family, especially in a context of scarcity and rationing. Family and community life. In the 1940s, family and community life also had distinct characteristics that many of us today might no longer see. Schools were still segregated in some places, especially in the South. Black and white children attended separate schools, reflecting the deep divisions in society. Children living during wartime also had special experiences. Many schools held air raid drills, where children were instructed on how to take cover and protect themselves in case of an attack. It was a scary, but unavoidable part of their lives. However, children's lives weren't only about war. They still found joy in simple outdoor games like tag or Mother May I. They played innocently until the streetlights came on, signaling it was time to go home. Looking back at the 1940s, what about everyday life in America surprises you the most? Comment below. Light in the darkness, entertainment and spirit. Even during the darkest years of the war, Americans found small rays of light in their daily lives, especially through entertainment. Hollywood, music, and radio became close companions, helping to soothe anxieties and boost the morale of an entire nation. Hollywood and the power of propaganda. Throughout World War II, the American film industry received strong support from the government. This was because cinema had an excellent ability to boost public morale, convey messages, and strengthen the will to fight. Can you recall those old movie theaters with wooden seats, where everyone watched emotional films together? Audiences typically watched newsreels, about 10 minutes long, filled with images and reports of recent battles. These newsreels helped the public stay updated on the war situation, creating a sense of connection to the front lines. Following that would be a cartoon. Many cartoons even caricatured the enemy, sometimes with racist imagery, reflecting the prevailing views of the time. Documentaries also played an important role. Frank Capra's 7-part Why We Fight series, released from 1943 to 1945, emphasized the necessity of U.S. involvement in the war and the importance of Allied victory. These films were not only entertaining, but also powerful propaganda tools, strengthening patriotism. Famous Hollywood stars like Clark Gable and Jimmy Stewart enlisted and participated in combat missions. Their involvement not only boosted morale for the military, but also for the public, showing that everyone contributed to the war. Highly acclaimed films of this period include Casablanca, a classic story of love and sacrifice; Mrs. Miniver, a film about family resilience during wartime; Going My Way, which earned Bing Crosby an Oscar in 1944; and Yankee Doodle Dandy, an inspiring musical. Hollywood truly became a spiritual front. Evocative music. As the United States plunged into war, people listened more to patriotic or war-related music. Music became the voice of an entire generation. Songs captured the emotions of wartime, expressing the longing of loved ones separated by distance. Tunes like I'll Walk Alone, Shoo Shoo Baby, I'm Making Believe, and I'll Be Seeing You became popular. These were soft, emotional melodies that helped soothe the souls of soldiers on the front lines and their loved ones on the home front. In particular, the song I'll Be Home by Christmas, 1943, had a poignant note, topping the charts for 11 weeks. Bing Crosby's version, along with countless others, remained very popular. This song touched the hearts of millions, conveying the dream of a peaceful reunion. Radio and big band concert programs, like Glenn Miller's, brought music directly to listeners across America. Music was not just entertainment, it was hope, a thread connecting millions of hearts during the war. Radio and everyday life. Can you imagine a time without the internet, without cable TV, when even TV wasn't widespread? Radio was the primary source of news and entertainment for most American families during the war. Every evening, people increasingly relied on the radio for updates about the war overseas. Families often gathered around the radio every evening, usually in the kitchen, to listen to news and entertainment programs. It was a daily ritual where everyone collectively listened to stories, music, and important messages from the government. Besides war news, entertainment programs were also diverse, from humorous comedy shows to big band musical performances. Laughter and music helped to alleviate some of the worries. Some jazz lovers even risked not going to bomb shelters just to listen to recordings. They felt safe listening to music, a testament to the soothing power of music in the worst of times. Radio was not just a device. It was a family member, a bridge to the outside world, bringing both news and comfort. In the 1940s, if you could choose one favorite form of entertainment, movies, music, radio, what would it be? Let us know. America becomes a superpower. Under FDR's skillful leadership, the United States emerged as a global superpower after the war. America came out of the war with relatively low casualties, around 330,000 lives, accounting for 0.2% of its population. This figure sharply contrasts with Britain, 1% of its population, and the Soviet Union, 16% of its population nations, that suffered far more terrible losses. The U.S. accounted for nearly 60% of global industrial output, transforming the country into a massive factory producing goods for the entire world. The U.S. also held 3/4 of the world's gold reserves and was the world's largest creditor. This overwhelming economic and military power elevated the U.S. to global leadership, ushering in a new era of Pax Americana. If you enjoyed this nostalgic journey, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel to not miss other fascinating historical stories, and share this video with friends who also love history and road trips. Thanks for watching, and happy travels full of memories.